Hey everyone, this is Jake. Welcome to 2022. So far it's already an outlandish nightmare, but hey, what can you do? While the wider world is in a seemingly never-ending spiral, the games industry has some good stuff happening this year. Well, indie games have some good stuff happening this year. We're getting Framemakers, Unbeatable, Indie Rumble's actually looking really solid, and as I stated in the year in review, 2022 is the year of Gunvolt. Inti announced a ton of big things for the franchise, and while we'll have to wait another half year to get the apex of the main trilogy, we got a new project to tide us over in the form of Gunvolt Chronicles Luminous Avenger X2. That came out like 4 days before this video will, and I figured I'd talk about it because, man, there's a lot to say. I'll be setting big spoilers aside for the end of the video, but if you want to go in properly blind, you may want to bow out now. Let's get into it. So there's a lot to this game that sets it apart from, well, pretty much any other Gunvolt game. First off, it's set in another universe, separate from even X1, which I think can be neat for a story to do, but I don't feel like this game does much with it, honestly. It was part of why I was excited for this game, because introducing the multiverse is a big deal for any franchise, but it's pretty clear that this, just like the rest of the plot, honestly wasn't really given that much thought. Now, ultimately, while the plot is important, I don't think a shallow plot is a death sentence for any game. Fantastic character moments can easily cover that up, and ultimately, I think the game falters here too. There's not really much happening with any of these characters, and what does happen tends to feel forced. The voice cast is another new element to LAX2, with this being the first installment to receive a dub, but I personally feel it could have been handled better. A lot of these performances feel kinda shallow, and while there are some VAs doing a pretty good job, like Kira Buckland, Connor Colquhoun, and surprisingly Aaron Hansen, others like Alejandro Saab and Steve Nunez feel pretty stilted. Also, Cassandra Lee Morris is a fantastic actress, but I can't help but hear way too much Morgana in her Lola portrayal. That's not to decry those VAs, they've all done fantastic work on other roles, but whether it's them or their direction, their work here isn't reflective of their best. For most people, that's fine. I know that plenty of people vibe with Gunvolt for the gameplay and never give a second thought to the story. However, if you're going into this experience expecting the usual Gunvolt, you might be surprised. Copen's toolkit has been heavily adjusted. He's got access to melee attacks, a shoulder bash, and free heals at any time, but he's also lost a ton of stuff. Prevasion, bullet dashes, and reload crushes are all gone, and it makes for a very odd experience. I still think it's fun, but a lot of what made Gunvolt gameplay, especially with Copen, interesting, is that it made maintaining momentum easy and fun. I'd argue more than most Sonic games. That's still here, but for some reason Copen's air game is locked behind either A, 1000 kudos, which grants access to more air dashes and feels fantastic, or B, death, and I honestly can't say the gameplay's better off for it. Forcing their player to slowly work their way up to the more fun gameplay is a neat concept, but the kudos requirement is super high, so unless you know where bonus emblems are, you're going to be taking the first half of each stage super slow. There's also the full heal, which isn't tied to a cooldown, but does bring your kudos count to 0, and I'm conflicted on it. On one hand, if you're not doing a kudos run, Gunvolt games as a whole are already generally easy, but on the other hand, if they're already easy, why do you need a full heal? Honestly, the upgrade just feels kinda pointless, especially considering that checkpoints also restore you to full health now. Ultimately, this game feels like, well, exactly what it likely is, an experiment. They're trying new things with the gameplay, world building, and even localization, and while I don't feel it works to this game's advantage, there are some concepts here that, if refined, could really make Gunvolt 3 shine. The melee integration isn't too strong here, but it could make for a more robust combat system next time around. The dub isn't as great as it could be here, but with a little more direction, there could be something fantastic here. This is where I want to get into spoilers, but if you want to go in blind, my final verdict is that it really depends on what you expect from the game. If you're only willing to pay 25 bones for the absolute best of Gunvolt, you may want to wait for a sale. However, if you're down to pay the intro price for a game that's more experimental, maybe give it a shot. I think it's worth it. Okay, now let's talk about spoiler stuff, because I need a little positivity right now. First off, using the main hub menu to express story concepts is genuinely fucking sick. If we can get that in a game with more emotional staying power, we could have a real gut puncher on our hands. Also, letting bosses team up is so badass. I wish we could have gotten more of that with Daysite and Brigade, but what we got was still cool as hell. I'd love to see this replace the standard boss rush in Gunvolt 3. Plus, the endgame in general is really cool in my opinion. The environment is genuinely beautiful, and it introduces a ton of concepts I love. To wrap things up, this game is super not perfect, but it presents a lot of concepts I think could work, and ultimately, I'm still very optimistic for Gunvolt 3. Thank you guys for watching. It's been a long and pleasant break, but I'm happy to be back in the game. If you guys enjoyed and want to stay up to date on everything, please consider liking and subscribing. I'd really appreciate it. We're going to be back to discussing Framemakers next time, and I'm super excited to work on that, so I'm going to bow out for now. Have a good one.